everyone, have a good day. We are the Group 4 who will report and discuss about a novel written by the American author Harriet Beecher Stowe titled Uncle Tom's Cabin. So I will share first the background of the story and what is Uncle Tom's Cabin is all about. The term Uncle Tom comes from the title character of Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, where an enslaved African American, Tom, is beaten to death for refusing to betray the whereabouts of two other enslaved people. This book is the story of the suffering of slaves, had a great influence upon the abolitionist spirit. Harriet Beecher Stowe presents the slaves as people, even patterning the parting of a mother and son on her own anguish at her son's death. The Uncle Tom's Cabin is also known as Life Among the Lowly. So, it is an anti-slavery novel by American author Harriet Beecher Stowe, published in 2 volumes in 1852. The novel had a profound effect on attitudes toward African Americans and slavery in the United States, and is said to have helped lay the groundwork for the Civil War. The novel is about the problem of slavery and the treatment of humans as property. It is based on the life of Josiah Henson, 1789 to 1882.
The characters in the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin, the character was seen by many readers as the groundbreaking humanistic portrayal of a slave, one who uses non-resistance and gives his life to protect others who have escaped from slavery. However, the character also came to be seen, especially based on his portrayal and pro-compassion dramatizations, as inexplicably kind to white slaveholders. This led to the use of Uncle Tom, sometimes shortened to just a Tom, as a derogatory epithet for an exceedingly subservient person or house negro, particularly one aware of their own lower class racial status. Next is Simon Allegre. Simon Allegre, this man is an extremely cruel plantation owner who sees his slaves. This man is the embodiment of the most evil aspect of slavery. He is remembered as one of the vilest characters in all of classic literature. And next is Evangeline St. Clair. Little Eva, by name of Evangeline St. Clair, fictional character, the frail angelic daughter of a southern slave owner who befriends the black slave Uncle Tom in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Next is Miss Ophelia. The narrator describes Ophelia St. Clair, a middle-aged spinster from Vermont, Kimbo. He is the great example of Tom's belief in the Lord. Kimbo is one of the Legre's overseers who have been trained to brutalize their fellow slaves. Next is Arthur Selby or Selby. The owner of Uncle Tom in Kentucky, Selby sells Tom to the cruel Mr. Halley to pay off his debts. An educated, kind, and basically good-hearted man, Emily Selby. Mr. Selby's wife, Emily Selby, is a loving Christian woman who does not believe in slavery. She uses her influence with her husband to try to help the Selby's slave and is one of the novel's many morally virtuous and insightful female characters. George Selby, called Mas George by Uncle Tom. George is the Selby's good-hearted son, George Harris, Eliza's husband, and an intellectually curious and talented mulatto. Next is si Eliza Harris, Mrs. Selby's maid, George's wife, and Harry's mother. Eliza is an intelligent, beautiful, and brave young slave. Next is si Augustine St. Clair, Tom's master in New Orleans and Eva's father. St. Clair is a flighty and romantic man. Eva, also referred to in the book as Little Eva, her given name is Evangeline, is presented as an absolutely perfect child, a completely moral being, and an unimpeachable Christian. She laments the existence of slavery and sees no difference between black and whites. After befriending Tom while still a young girl, Eva became one of the most important figures in his life. In death, Eva becomes one of the text's central Christ figures. Next is si Marie, St. Clair's wife, a self-centered woman, P.T. Quakers. The Quakers, a Christian group that arose in mid-17th century England, dedicate themselves to achieving an inner understanding of God without the use of creeds, clergy, or outward rites. And next is si Tom Lacker, a slave hunter hired by Mr. Halley to bring back Eliza, Harry, and George. Tom Lacker first appears as a gruff, violent man. George shoots him when he tries to capture them, and after he is killed by the Quakers, Lacker experiences a transformation and chooses to join the Quaker rather than return to his old life. And Mr. Halley, the slave trader who buys Uncle Tom and Harry from Selby, a gruff, coarse man.
Major themes and influences. A major theme in Uncle Tom's Cabin is the problem of slavery and treatment of humans as property. Concepts that Stowe counterbalance against the morality of Christianity. Stowe's depiction of slavery in her novel was informed by her Christianity and by her immersion in abolitionist writings. She also drew on her personal experience during the 1830s and 40s while living in Cincinnati, Ohio, which was a destination for those escaping slavery in Kentucky and other southern states. In Uncle Tom's Cabin, she made her case against slavery by cataloging the suffering experienced by enslaved people and by showing that their owners were morally broken. Stowe also published a collection of documents and testimony, a key to Uncle Tom's Cabin, 1853, that she used to prove the truth of her novel's representation of slavery. Uncle Tom's Cabin combined the elements of contemporary humor and sentimental fiction in such a powerful manner that, according to some, it helped to precipitate the Civil War. Civil War is rooted in a statement typically rendered as, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that made this great war." That is spuriously attributed to U.S. Pres Abraham Lincoln. According to scholar Daniel R. Volaro, this comment, supposedly made by Lincoln to Stowe in December 1862, originated in Stowe family tradition and did not appear in print until 1896. That Lincoln almost certainly did not say this word, however, has not prevented them from being cited repeatedly as Uncle Tom's Cabin's legacy. Mrs. Shelby's maid, a young woman named Eliza, is a bold character whose actions are motivated by fear in material love. Eliza successfully escaped slavery with her son, fleeing to North and eventually making her way to Liberia with her son and husband.
So let's we go on in the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin tells the story of Uncle Tom, an enslaved person depicted as saintly and dignified, noble and steadfast in his beliefs, while being transported by boat to action in New Orleans. Tom saves the life of little Eva, an angelic and forgiving young girl whose grateful father then purchases Tom. Eva and Tom soon become great friends. Simon Legree, the principal villain in the story, represents greed and brutality, a man who chose sin over reform. Legree forces enslaved persons into different roles in his life. A woman named Cassie is forced to live with him. When Legree buys Tom, he also buys a 15-year-old girl named Emmeline, whom he intends to keep as a replacement for Cassie. So the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin begins in a Kentucky farmer named Arthur Shelby and his wife named Emily Shelby. So Arthur Shelby faces the prospect of losing everything he owns because of having run up large debts. Though he and his wife Emily Shelby have a kind-hearted and affectionate relationship with their slaves. So Shelby decided to raise money by selling two of his slaves to Mr. Haley. So si Mr. Haley, a coarse slave trader, the slaves in question are Uncle Tom, a middle-aged man with a wife and children on the farm, and Harry, the young son of Mrs. Shelby's maid Eliza. When Shelby tells his wife about his agreement with Haley, she is appalled because she has promised Eliza that Shelby would not sell her person.
Uncle Tom's Cabin begins the daring escape of young slave woman Eliza and the sale of the kindly middle-aged slave Tom to settle the debts of his master, a struggling Kentucky farmer. As Eliza struggles to make her way to freedom in Canada, Tom is sent downriver on a river boat where he meets and becomes fast friends with Angelique, white child of Eva. Eva's father, St. Clair, purchases Tom from the slave trader is taken to the St. Clair home in New Orleans, where he lives for 2 years. Then the frail too good to be true, Eva falls ill and dies, but not before experiencing a vision of heaven that makes everyone around her vow to do better and be better on this earth. Legree takes Tom to his plantation in Louisiana, where Tom to befriends and other slaves and witnesses the merciless brutality of Legree. He to hold on to his own faith and be a source of support and hope for the others. But this only infuriates Legree, making Tom that much more of target for Legree's maliciousness. When Tom encourages and helps two of Legree's slaves, Cassie and Emmeline, to escape that the last straw, Legree commands his overseers to beat Tom to death. But when, with his last breath, Tom forgives the men, they repent becoming Christians, now united in their rejection of slavery. As the novel ends, we find Eliza once again, who after a series of terrible hardship of her own, finally made it to Canada. Eventually, Cassie and Emmeline meet up with her there, and it's discovered that Cassie and is Eliza's long-lost mother, forced like so many slave women to give up her baby in infancy.
Next is the message of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Within the book itself, the message of Uncle Tom's Cabin is clear. Slavery was fundamentally evil, corrupting everyone it touched and destroying the lives of good, pious men like Uncle Tom. The point of the book was to emphasize the horrors of slavery. Its author, Harriet Beecher Stowe, was an abolitionist. Stowe's objections to slavery in the book is in many ways the antithesis of Christian belief. Stowe consistently points out the hypocrisy of Christian slaveholders, and Uncle Tom's Cabin is full of biblical references that would have been readily understood by her readers. Next is the central lesson. The central lesson Harriet Beecher Stowe wants readers to learn after reading Uncle Tom's Cabin. Slavery was an unjust and unchristian institution.
So, the lesson that can be learned from Uncle Tom's Cabin is that slavery is wrong. It is an evil institution and, as Stowe suggests, incompatible with the Christian religion. Slavery was fundamental evil, corrupting everyone it touched and destroying the lives of good men like Uncle Tom. The point of the book was to emphasize the horrors of slavery.